Hi, my name is Jan Carson. I'm going to be reading today from my novel The Raptures, which looks like this. It's a difficult book to read from without giving away too many spoilers, so I'm going to read from close to the start. I don't think there's too much you need to know, except it is about a kind of epidemic that sweeps through a small fictional rural village in Northern Ireland called Ballylack. And this is the second chapter. The summer begins. It's the last day of June in Ballylack. The summer holidays have just begun. At 10 past 10, evening not morning, the first child dies. He draws his last rattling breath and reaches for his mother's hand. She's been sitting for hours in a hospital chair. She's stiff and cold and sleep deprived, but she would never even for a second leave her wee boy by himself. By the time she unfolds her arm to reach across the bed's metal railings and clasp his hand, he's already gone. She doesn't let go for almost an hour. The boy's name was Ross, the McCormick's youngest lad. He was known for being a sickly child, prone to asthma and fevers, first to catch whatever's doing the rounds. It's not his first stint in the children's ward. Unlike his brother, the godlike Ryan, Ross wasn't the sporty type, nor much to look at either. A chubby wee lad with protruding teeth. Everybody in Ballylack knew him to see. Some thought him feeble, which, though excusable in a girl, was not to be tolerated in a boy. Others blamed the mother. They said she had her second lad spoiled. Babied until she had him ruined, how much of his sickness was in her head? Still, if you asked the locals who hovered outside Thompson's shop, they wouldn't have said a bad word against him. Ross was Ballylack born and raised. They thought of him as one of their own. During the last week of term, a tiny lump no bigger than a baked bean had appeared in Ross's armpit. It was soft to the touch and lightly furred, like a wart, but fleshier, the sort of thing which sprouts unbidden from the puckered jowls of elderly women. It grew quickly. Other bumps and lumps appeared in his neck. Mrs. McCormick assumed it was glandular fever. She'd had it herself about Ross's age. Dr. Simpson confirmed the diagnosis. Glandular fever had been doing the rounds of the big schools. Ross's brother must have brought it home on the bus. Ross was exhausted and feverish. For 3 days he flopped between bed and the living room sofa, where he watched cartoons and ate nothing but ice cream and Angel Delight. His throat was raw, his head pounding, his skin was clammy to the touch. Sometimes the fever left him feeling drunk on the head. He talked utter nonsense and didn't seem to know where he was. Still, Dr. Simpson said there was no need to be alarmed. Lots of rest and plenty of fluids. The lad'll make a full recovery. Mr. McCormick asked Dr. Simpson if he thought Ross would be up and about in 10 days' time. He'd booked a fortnight in Lanzarote. They were leaving the night before the 12th. The deposit would be lost if they didn't show up. Dr. Simpson couldn't or wouldn't give him an answer. It's hard to tell with glandular fever. It's one of those illnesses that has to run its course. Ross didn't make anything of it. He deteriorated quickly. Suddenly the pain was no longer soft. It shrieked through his bones. It hurt every time he tried to move. He was transferred to the hospital, where they wired him up to a drip and began running tests. It became apparent that this wasn't glandular fever. None of the doctors knew what it was. They picked through Ross's medical notes. The child's had every illness under the sun, and while this could be the mark of an over-anxious mother, it could also mean there's something fundamentally wrong with him. On the 5th day, Ross went downhill rapidly. It looked like they were losing him. His skin turned the sort of colour you don't come back from. Ross didn't realise how ill he was. His parents chose to keep it from him. They didn't know how to say what they needed to say. "Oh, you're very poorly, son. Your organs are failing. Looks like you're probably going to die." They avoided all talk of the future, focusing instead on getting Ross over each small hurdle. Blood tests, drip changes, trips to the toilet. The minister appeared on the ward. He prayed that Ross would soon recover, but advised him to take each hour at a time. His brother bought him football magazines and packets of Haribo he wasn't allowed to eat. Ryan felt guilty. Here he was once again the lucky one. He was better looking, better at football, and now more likely to see September. He felt truly crap about this, and a small bit relieved that it wasn't him. The pair of them talked about television and computer games. The conversation was stilted. Ryan suspected that his brother was going to die. It was weird to be talking about normal things when Ross might not be there by the end of the week. Ryan wondered if there were things he should be saying, like, I love you, or I'm going to miss you. He'd never talked like this to his brother before, but he knows from the movies that people are meant to say all sorts of sappy shite when they know somebody's about to die. 2 days before he died, Ross asked his mother for new football boots. Though she knew she was throwing good money after bad and wept loudly at the till and styling sport, she still bought him the most expensive kind, the sort that are one colour all over, like the cartoon idea of a shoe. She'll keep those shoes unopened in the box for several years and eventually bin them. She can't bear to think of Ross's boots sitting pretty in some other lad's foot. Whatever was ruining him spread through his body, slowly at first, then with lightning ease. It ran through his veins and laid siege to his heart. Chirrump, chirrump, chirrump went his myocardium, losing speed with every contraction, until his blood grew thick as shop-bought custard and couldn't be coerced into further circulation. He died on the last day of June, his face a swollen balloon of itself, pale and bloated from the drugs. In death he was an awful funny colour, both pallid and florid at the same time. The nurse reassured his mother they could fix this with makeup for the funeral. His mother wasn't listening. Ross had only just turned 11. He was still a child, though the thought of girls was already pressing. He'd sometimes go through the K's catalogue for pictures of women in bras and pants. He'd yet to touch a girl himself, had yet to taste coffee or travel anywhere in an airplane. He'd been looking forward to Lanzarote. It would have been his first time in a foreign place. Poor Ross. It's never easy going first. There's been no talk of the boys passing yet. It'll be mid-morning before the news spreads. In the houses and farms of Ballylack, people are getting on with their everyday doing. They're feeding the cows and drinking tea, watching the telly and heading to bed. There's no expectation that tomorrow will be much different from today. 93 has been an unremarkable year. The summer's shaping up to be equally forgettable. It's neither hot nor particularly damp. It isn't a World Cup year or one for the Olympics. Majors in Downing Street, Clinton's in the White House. Folks aren't sure what to make of him. Keep an eye on that one. He's got notions, they like to say. There's talk of Clinton wading into the troubles. Word is, he thinks he can sort it out. Let the same fella have a run at it. Better than him have tried and failed. Down south, Ireland win the Eurovision for the umpteenth year in a row. In Your Eyes is the song in question. You'd have a hard time dancing to it, though it's got a catchy hook. Makes a change from the usual earnest shite. Plonk, 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 and words about peace. What are the young ones listening to? Shaggy, Ace of Base, Too Unlimited, feel-good Euro hits. They don't sound half so feel-good, pumping through the tinny speakers at the GAA clubs and community centres where Ulster's youth hang out. Dancing, smoking, drinking cheap vodka decanted into Fanta bottles. No, no limits, we'll reach for the sky, the youngsters sing, pit fists pumping furiously to the beat, black bomber jackets soaking up their sweat. They go buck mad every time No Limits comes on. It's only a tune to them, not the call to arms it could be. No Limits indeed. What a load of bollocks. These kids hail from Aucher, Clocher and Cullibaggy. Say it out loud. Cullibaggy. You can practically hear the fences. They couldn't be more limited if they tried. Elsewhere in the province they're still at it, killing each other with bombs and guns. It's the 23rd or 4th summer of this nonsense. Depends on when you started keeping count. Most folks are fed up with the whole thing. They're adamant the killing must stop. There's a war in Bosnia and Afghanistan. There's a brutal one winding up in Rwanda. You can't turn your telly on for seeing dead bodies piled everywhere. Blood pooling in the gutters, women howling and getting on. The people here are sick of death. This isn't a third world country. This is Britain. Or this is Ireland. Or both. Or neither. Or its own country. Its own institution, peculiar as a maiden aunt. Either way, it's a civilised country. It's been a whole 2 years since McDonald's arrived. It should never have got to the state it's in. Same old, 20-odd years of everyday killings, routine set in years ago. Everybody's just trying to get on with enjoying the summer. Those who can have booked their holidays over the 12th. Best to get out before things kick off. The ones with money are heading to the continent, just to be sure of a bit of heat. Everybody else is making the most of the weather. If it isn't raining, it's considered gorgeous out and not to be wasted. Now's the time to get the good of a garden if you're lucky enough to have access to one. The buzz of lawnmowers harmonises above the hedges, barbecue sizzle with sausage fat, children kick footballs down by the swings, the insect hum of combine harvesters zithers and twitches on the breeze. This is the sound of an Ulster summer. This and the distant rumble of lambeg drums. Ballylack's no different from any other one-street village orbiting a market town. It has a pub, a shop and a primary school. The older kids bus into town where the grammar's decent, but the high school's a glorified holding pen for kids on a fast track to pulling necks at the chicken factory or returning to work on their daddy's farms. There's half a dozen churches in the village and a sorry excuse for a housing estate, 24 semis grouped around a scrubby strip of grass. A community centre, a doctor's surgery and a play park that's seen better days. The children congregate around the climbing frame, hanging upside down from the monkey bars, arm sockets burning, hooked by the ankles till the blood runs to their heads. They'll kick at the dirt, and kick at the walls, and kick a ball if a ball's forthcoming, and lament the loss of the second swing, which came off in March and has yet to be replaced. There's no money for fixing swings. There's not much to do in Ballylack. The children here know nothing else. School's out for 8 long weeks. It falls to the mothers to keep their offspring occupied. When the rain holds off, it's not so bad. Here in the country, a child can be turfed out at sunrise and left all day to their own devices. They always come home when the hunger kicks in. It's different when it rains, and the northern summer's no stranger to rain. Then the mothers must do their best with children's programmes and colouring books. They'll scour the paper for holiday clubs which offer Bible teaching and Jaffa cakes. 3 blessed hours of daily respite. You don't even have to pay the born-agains. They'll take your wains for free and call themselves grateful. Or fool them, the mothers think, and hope their children don't come home too full of pious talk. They're thankful for the offer all the same. They wouldn't like a gift horse in the mouth. 2 months is an eternity when you've a wreck of wee ones under your feet. 1993 is like every other summer in Ballylack. Same old till the problems with the children start. Ross McCormick's the first. They're that used to him being poorly as death is not a big surprise. Nonetheless, it's a tragedy. The general consensus is glandular fever with complications. Though the doctors have already ruled this out, the Ballylack rumour mill's still running with it and will no doubt continue to speculate until the autopsy report comes back from Belfast. The family are still waiting on it when they bury Ross 3 days after he's breathed his last. Just a child, the old folks will say, as they stand waiting for his funeral to start. Such a waste, as if Ross were an overlooked mandarin fern at the bottom of the fruit bowl. Because he was young, people will come to the funeral who didn't really know Ross that well. This is seen as a form of respect. It's also blatant nosiness. Rarely do they get a dead child in Ballylack, and when they do, it's always a baby. Baby funerals are usually closed. They'll bury Ross in his school uniform, grey flannel slacks, white shirt, striped tie and Clark's scuff-proof shoes, scuffed cloudy from months of lunchtime football. His mother will take charge of his dressing. She'll want him looking well despite his swollen head and his mottled skin. Ross doesn't own a suit. He's not had the chance to acquire one yet, hence the uniform and the perfectly knotted school tie. He looked like a little man in the coffin, his hair parted slickly to the left, as if he isn't dead at all, just waiting on the school photographer to coerce him into one last cheesy smile.